Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is
episode 111. Well, it's always an exciting day when I have a naturopathic doctor on the show. So excited to have Dr. Brooke Kalanick with us. Her website is betterbydrabrooke.com, and she's here to teach us all about how we can start to get our energy back, because there's this giant epidemic of adrenal fatigue that goes undiagnosed and then of course has a bunch of other things that come with it, or maybe the adrenal fatigue itself is not the root cause, so the root cause is causing all these other symptoms. But if you feel tired all the time, then you want to listen to Dr. Brooke teach us what we can do to bring our body back into balance. Now, Dr. Brooke also specializes in helping women heal from PCOS, helping women go through menopause in the healthiest way possible, and helping to balance hormones. Definitely check out her website and her podcast. Her podcast is Better Every Day, and she's got some amazing blog posts on her website as well. Really excited to have you here, Dr. Brooke.
Thank you, Ashley. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So before we get into learning how we can heal our body and get our energy back, I'd love for you to share with us your story. What led you to become a naturopathic physician?
It's funny that we talk about energy, because it's sort of that. Like, I was sort of falling apart when I found this. So I am a naturopathic and functional medicine doctor now. I went to Bastyr University in Seattle, and that was hard to believe. We were talking off air. That was like a dozen years ago. Seems like a lifetime ago. But before that, I was, an undergrad student, and then I was in pharmacy school, and I was sort of falling apart at that time, having lots of headaches and just sort of vague symptoms that, of course, fatigue and fatigues, headaches, crazy stuff going on with my skin, my cycle. And of course, every time I went into, my student health center, they were like, well, it's diabetes. Well, it's a brain tumor. It was like everything crazy. But of course, it was nothing. It was never anything, it wasn't nothing for me, but it was never anything like really concrete. And this is what so many women I know now go through. That, it takes at least 5 years for most women to get to the root cause of their fatigue, or to even get any help, or to not be told, well, it's nothing, your labs are fine, get out of my office, or it's in your head, or the worst one I think is, well, that's just normal. Everybody feels like garbage. So I was feeling badly and getting nowhere and sort of declining pretty quickly, and really struggling with, this doctorate level program that I needed to be pretty sharp for. Certainly wasn't very happy, and got into seeing my mom's naturopathic doctor. And I know now what she did for me was so simple. She kind of helped me fine tune my nutrition a little bit. She cleaned up the kind of oils I was cooking with. She put me on a couple of supplements, suggested I come off a few foods she thought might be bothering me. And I truly felt like, a new person. So that really kind of piqued my interest, but I still thought I would stay either in pharmacy school or continue on to medical school, and then probably still stay in conventional medicine and maybe do a little of this, on the side. And things just sort of continued to happen with me. And I repeatedly found answers with her. And I thought, I think that this is something I really want to pursue. So I left that and, started over going to school kind of right from scratch again for another 6 more years. And also within that, sort of always intended to, work with women and help women. And I had every intention of probably just working with I was trained as a primary care provider, so I was planning on doing that, maybe with an emphasis in women's health. And as I sort of grew my passion with the stuff that was going wrong in my health, so my thyroid and weight loss was always a struggle for me as somebody with PCOS. And so I learned a lot about exercise and nutrition that was a little bit different than what I was being taught at school. So what became my practice was a lot of things that I had struggled with, and things that I really wanted to help other women that had been in my situation where they just weren't getting better, and just being presented, especially with PCOS, with such limited options. My skin's breaking out, my cycle's a mess, having a hard time losing weight, I don't have any energy, just really not feeling great at all, worried about my future fertility, had a couple of miscarriages early on when I was married. And it was all of that was my only option was the pill and maybe some metformin, but my blood sugar was never really even bad enough to warrant that. So I felt like what I really wanted to do in my practice was give women more options for these things in their health when I knew that there was a lot of better tools out there. Some of that requires more work on our part. I have to go to the gym, I have to eat well, I have to take some vitamins, but definitely I felt like the natural and functional world really offered a lot more help that I could give women. So that's where I've been ever since.
I love it. And we were talking before I hit record about how you really want to show people and teach women that there are so many more options, that when you go to your MD, most of the time it's going to be a handful of drugs and, see you later. And there's no real lifestyle guidance, or they'll just say, go exercise. And for someone who has chronic adrenal fatigue, for example, is like, yeah, you want me to go exercise? I just told you I am, exhausted. And so there's exercise. A lot of exercise is actually bad for you, or not. It's not going to help your body heal. And you were saying that one thing you love to do is teach women exactly what kind of exercise they can do. So it's medicinal exercise. It's a type of exercise that is going to help their body heal. Because you don't want to just, like you said, sit before we hit record, sit on the couch and go, okay, I'm going to take my supplements and change my diet and just wait until I'm better and then go exercise.
Yeah, so this is a big topic, and this is one that I got it so wrong when I first, started working with women. Because first of all, with PCOS, I only really knew my kind of PCOS. So I'm someone who puts on muscle really easy, and I don't take off body fat very easy at all, and I gain it really easy. But I can get strong easy, and I can put on size with muscle really, really quickly. And I need to follow a really low carb diet. And so that's sort of what I knew. And as I started, pitching myself as someone who knew about PCOS, of course, I'm running into, other types of women with PCOS who they're really lean, or they are not struggling with their body fat, or they may not be getting a period at all. And here I am getting a relatively normal period with these certain things. So I had to kind of learn the hard way that PCOS, for example, is a condition where there's really very different things that women need to do. But of course, if you look out there, the PCOS advice is like, well, go low carb and go do a lot of aerobic exercise, right? Eat whole grains. So there was a lot of that I had to sift through with that, in sort of to learn how to help all these other women. And because my practice, I did do a lot of weight loss and hormone imbalances, I ended up with a lot of women with thyroid conditions and Hashimoto's, which I can honestly say I knew very little about when I first got out of school. And much of what I was doing, what I was taught to do, it was more complete than I think what their medical doctors were doing or their conventional model was doing, but it was still really ineffective. So of course, since that time, I've learned about PCOS. We have a lot more information about hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's and autoimmunity in general. And we know now more connections. There's more research being done about food issues in terms of leaky gut. We know a lot. That's a real thing now. We're studying it at Harvard, so it's legitimate now. That was something we talked about back when I was in school, but now I think it's real because we've got real research coming out. So anyway, we've got a lot more, I think, options and understanding of some of these things. And another thing that's really important in autoimmunity is glutathione status and your ability to cope with sort of the oxidative stress of, life and the fact that you have an autoimmune disease. And all that to say that there was these really confounding metabolic issues that made exercise a particular challenge for a woman who's dealt with adrenal fatigue or certain variations in her stress profile when she was going through menopause, or also dealing with PCOS. And certainly a woman with low thyroid function and or dealing with Hashimoto's. So one of those big things is oxidative stress. So as we know, exercise is one of those quote unquote good stresses, right? There's different kinds of stress that are bad, and exercise is a good stress, but it's still stressful. So when you have a physiology that can't handle exercise, I feel like the advice is like, well, just take it easy, don't exercise. And then we rapidly go through this thing where we're losing muscle mass, we're losing all conditioning. Many people get a feel-good benefit from exercise. We know we feel better when we do it. And we also know it's an important part of like longevity and staying healthy. So what I've had to do, of course, is try to figure out how can I help women kind of listen to their body, which I feel like is this really elusive thing. We have some new tools now, like heart rate variability, where we can check in with with a monitor every morning and see how we're able to cope with stress that day. But one of the things I feel like is really important for women to understand is that as they're trying to do something and not do nothing, but not do so much that they wreck themselves. And we all can think about, if you've been here or you know someone who's been here where you're not doing very good, you start taking your vitamins, you start feeling a little bit better, working with someone on your adrenal fatigue or your Hashimoto's, and you start to feel a little better. So you have one of those good days, and what do? We do too much, right? You go to a yoga class, and then you maybe go lift some weights, and then you go run a bunch of errands and chase your kids. So, and then they crash. So I had a lot of women who were just struggling with figuring out, how do I exercise and how much can I do? And I can't wreck myself, and I can't go to the gym and then feel like a truck hit me for 3 days, or I can't have, PCOS and just do this kind of workout because that makes me do X, Y, and Z, which isn't good for me, even though it was good for my girlfriend with PCOS. So part of that is sort of constructing a workout that is sort of equal parts gentle on your central nervous system and gentle on your metabolic system, but allows you to gain some strength and make some gains, and then checking in to see if you can do a little bit more. And if that little bit more is maybe walking or maybe working in some other type of metabolic work. And part of that is listening to just, like I said, teaching women how to listen to their body. I think it's so unfortunate. So many women are just told that, well, that's normal, or everybody has that. And one thing I always say to my patients and on my podcast is we can't confuse common with normal. So just because all of our girlfriends have X, Y, and Z, or we can all kind of commiserate and complain about something, it makes it common, but it's not normal for us to have breakouts or to have really bad PMS or an irregular cycle or feel like we're just wrecked when we go to, one workout at the gym. So there's a few things we can always check in with. And I use an acronym called ACEs, so appetite, cravings, energy, and sleep. So appetite, cravings, and energy have a lot to do with our adrenal health, some thyroid health, and our blood sugar control. So those are variables we have a lot of control over that, right? It might not feel like it all the time to control what we're eating, but we can if we learn to tune into those signals and fine tune our protein and our vegetables and work on our carbohydrate tolerance. And then the S is for sleep. And I feel like that has so much to do with blood sugar and cortisol. And again, we all talk about how everybody has poor sleep. Everyone's not getting enough sleep. Everyone's tired. And again, it's common, but it's not normal. So exercise recovery, and then the acronym ACEs, and then sometimes using a tool like heart rate variability, which you can get a monitor for. They're just all things that all of us should know, I feel like really, powerfully give us some information to make some decisions of, does this work for me? Is this workout good for me? Is this food good for me?
You'd mentioned heart rate monitor. When would we use that, and how would we use it?
So what I'm talking about here is a heart rate variability monitor. So that is basically they're looking for not necessarily your heart rate, but how much variability there is. And that is a reflection of how well you cope with stress. So there's a couple of them out there. There's one called the BioForce, which is, I believe, are in the $300 range. There's also one called the Elite HRV, which is less expensive, and that has an app right to your phone. And it's going to give you sort of a little color code in the morning of, if you're in the red, the yellow, the green. And so if it's a good idea for you to exercise that day, or maybe today is just like a walk day or a recovery day. And, if you're continually in a danger zone, what do you need to do? It doesn't tell you what to do, but, that tells you you're stressed. And I think that some women and some people, we really know, we can tell by our symptoms, especially those of us with PCOS. I can tell in a heartbeat how my, hormones are doing if I start to break out, or if my cycle is late, or if I have bad PMS that month. But not every woman can tell that. Some people, their symptoms aren't as obvious, or they've just learned for so long to kind of trudge through it and keep going. And so a tool like the heart rate variability monitor can be really useful because it gives you some concrete information if you're not totally clear on how to read your symptoms.
Like a listener goes and buys one, what would they look for? Is it only during exercise, or is it like when they wake up in the morning they look at their heart rate, and after they eat they look at their heart rate? Are they seeing how their heart is responding throughout the day to different stimulus, and should it be rising, or shouldn't it, so are they using it to gauge whether they should or shouldn't be doing that activity, or whether they should adjust their, oh, wow, I'm really stressed out because my heart is racing, so I'm just going to go lie down, or is it only for when they're exercising?
No, so it's actually something you do in the morning. So you just check in and it sort of gives a read again of the variability, not necessarily how many beats per minute, but how well are you able to adjust to stress? So looking for that variability. So what heart rate variability is it's looking at, we've got these two sides of our autonomic nervous system. So that thing that's kind of keeping us going. We've got the quiet rest and digest of our parasympathetic system. And then we've got that fight or flight of the sympathetic system. And so basically you're looking at your regulation is sort of like your ability to be flexible and adjust to things. And so when we're looking at something like heart rate variability, it can give you a very good indicator of like how well you are coping with stress. So some stress we can't avoid. You might still have to go, to work that day, but you want that ability to cope with stress. And this is a tool that can give you that. So you don't want to have, a really reduced capacity to cope with stress. And this is just one of those tools that can give you a little bit better objective feedback.
Got it. So it's telling you if you're in stress mode.
Basically, exactly. And sometimes we don't know that, right? Sometimes,
Right.
we know when our heart's pounding and jumping through the roof, but sometimes we've been in stress for a long time. Or you might have, something that's really important, I think, when it comes to stress is that there's stresses that we know. Like we know when we're running late and we know when we look at our checking count and it's, in the red, right? We know those kind of stresses. We know what it's like to have stress in our relationship or trouble with one of our children or a deadline or a coworker that we hate, or even the good stresses. Like we know planning a wedding is stressful or having a new baby is stressful. And we know it's stressful, but it's a good stress. But there's all this other stress that we don't even know that we're having. Like we don't always know that we need electrolytes. We don't always know that our thyroid is low. We don't always know that we have a ton of inflammation or that we're borderline low in B12. We don't know how our essential fatty acids are doing. And all of those are other stresses that you may not know. Your body knows, and it may be coping with one of these kind of underlying metabolic stressors, or you may be dealing with autoimmunity and generating a lot of inflammation and what I talked about earlier with that oxidative stress. And you may not be aware that that is stress for you because it's a whole different kind of stress. But as far as your body's concerned, still stress. So sometimes things like an HRV monitor can just kind of give you an idea of how you're coping with your life. But sometimes it's really insightful to see that there may be something deeper going on if you don't particularly feel like life is that bad right now.
Got it. So if you're like practically on vacation and your HRT monitor is telling you you're in stress mode, then you're like, whoa, it's time to go to my naturopath and figure out what's going on, because I'm completely relaxed. I have nothing emotionally going on, but my body is not able to get into the rest and digest mode. It's still in that fight or flight response.
Yeah. And so you would see that your variability is not good and that, you're sort of not getting a good balance between your calming down and your, ramping up fight or flight. Exactly.
So if I were to put this monitor on right now, for example, and I was in stress mode, could I go do like a 5-minute deep breathing exercise or a walk or meditation and then put it on, and I would notice that it would be decreased, or it would be I would show favorable results?
Yeah, gosh, that's a good question if it's changing like immediately, because usually people will just do it in the morning. So it's a little bit more of like kind of how you're doing overall versus like immediately. I think that that's a great tool if you like know that your heart is racing. So remember, this is about like variability versus just your heart rate, which we can either take our pulse or many of us can feel when our heart is just racing. So yeah, I think this is a good tool to kind of use out of the gate in the morning to kind of assess like overall, do I need to take it easy today? Whereas I think what you just mentioned is probably a good, like, am I freaking out in this moment? And then of course, deep breathing, go for a walk. Sometimes eating food is helpful if you're somebody who tends to be in adrenal stress and low cortisol and low blood sugar. Sometimes that can be a part of that heart racing as well.
Got it. Very cool. It's kind of reminding me a bit of like doing biofeedback, but more in the long term. So you're checking in with yourself every day and going, Am I getting better? Because I notice I'm in stress mode. Every morning it's showing up. So I'm going to now do a new routine called, I'm going to do deep breathing 5 times a day. And I'm going to make sure I go for a few minute walk. And I'm going to do some hydrotherapy, like a hot bath at night. And I'm going to make sure that I cut out some unneeded stressors. And then you do that on a regular basis. Maybe you've cut out some sugar and you've added in some more vegetables. You did all these changes. And you start taking your adrenal supplements, supporting supplements. And then you notice that a few weeks later, you're looking at your heart rate variability and it's getting better and better and better. So you know you're on the right track. Is that sort of what you're looking for?
Exactly. And you'll definitely see it when you start a new exercise regimen and, or like everything you just said is absolutely correct. And then, again, if like you're training in a way and you look at like every time I do this, like let's say it's a CrossFit workout 3 times a week, I'm a wreck. My heart rate variability is not good after that. So you can see how some of the things we're doing can really affect your ability to cope with stress and that they are becoming too big of a stressor for you. So and I also think it's women especially, we tend to do too much. We tend to, just push ourselves and wreck ourselves so easily. So I feel like it's a very good tool for, especially if you're prone to doing that, to check in with something that will, hopefully not allow you to do that, right? It gives you some information that pushing it today for the sake of weight loss or the sake of meeting some other goal may not be, it's going to be definitely negatively impacting your health.
This is really fascinating. I actually, I've always considered myself a very strong woman. I've got, my head on my shoulders, and I'm emotional. I'm I'm a Pisces, so but I'm also very like just logical. Like let's get back to logic, and I don't like to make like business decisions from emotion. It comes let's calm ourselves, bring us back down to logic. And a few months ago, I thought I was dying. I literally thought I was dying. And it turns out I was having panic attacks from something that I would let the stress get so out of control that my body was like screaming at me. And all the time I'm thinking, well, I'm a strong person. I can handle this. I don't need to, I need to like manage my stress. And it's
right.
So funny that it will really beat our bodies into the ground because we think we can handle all this stress, or we think that we just should shoulder it. And then the body starts, telling you in little ways and little symptoms, and then it starts getting louder and louder. And my heart was pounding, my head was dizzy, my palms were sweating, I was having a hot flash, and I thought, am I dying? Like, what's going on? And then when I finally came to terms with it, I realized that I had let stress get so bad that my body was creating a panic attack for me to pay attention. And if I had this heart rate variability,
yes.
monitor, I could have like seen the ramp up of it going up and up and up. And what I think that women don't realize is, and men too, especially men too, because both of us have ways of getting in complete denial about our stress and thinking that we can shoulder it, we can handle it, and then it'll show up in other ways. Though it's like the chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and so your one part of your body which is weaker, so it might show up in diabetes or in blood sugar. It might show up as cancer. It might show up as chronic adrenal fatigue. It might show up as, panic attacks. The body is going to kind of exhibit these symptoms. And so I love this. This is a great, that's a fun monitor, because then if we stop taking care of ourselves, stop doing things to create relaxation and things to turn off the stress response, we can begin to see that in the heart rate variability monitor. So that is really cool.
Yeah, stress and inflammation, we know that's at the root of all of our trouble, right? That is kind of at the root of most chronic disease. And I think I see this especially with women like myself who I don't do it as much now, but, just wear stress like a badge of honor. When someone asks us how we are, it's like, I'm so busy. I'm so stressed out. It just becomes, again, common, but it shouldn't be considered necessarily normal. And when we have little nagging symptoms, so let's say, you're having a little bit of insomnia, maybe your digestion's a little bit off, maybe your PMS has changed for the worse, maybe your cycle's gotten a few days, longer. We tend to think of that as like, well, it's not the end of the world, right? I didn't get a, horrifying diagnosis. I didn't get, labeled with a chronic disease. My doctor didn't come back to me with something like really significant that scared me. And so we don't make the changes. We sort of think, well, I'll deal with that later. Right now, I have to deal with the fact that I've got 2 kids and running a business and all of these things. And so we just put ourselves off. And the thing is, it doesn't go away. It just gets more and more broken. And I think that it's so... I feel like what unfortunately happens as humans is we wait for a big crisis to make a change, and we don't see those little symptoms. They're just sort of pesky, but they're not super scary. And then we wait 10 years. And so one of the things I try to help women do is be their own best friend. And so let's say, Ashley, you and I are best friends, and you come to me and you're like, man, I am just really feeling wiped out. Like every time I go to the gym, I'm kind of a wreck, and I'm losing my heart rate variability, and it doesn't look like I'm coping with stress well. And my cycle was really late this month, and I really don't feel very good. And my digestion is, I don't know, all of a sudden I'm reacting to all these foods. If you're my best friend, I wouldn't say, well, I'll get back to you in 6 months. Like, quit whining. It's not that big of a deal. I'll deal with you later. We would never say that, right? But we say that to ourselves all the time, especially as mothers. I'll take care of myself later. And there's never really a good time to take care of ourselves until we just make the time, take care of ourselves. So when women say to me, well, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to start taking better care of myself, or I don't know how to be my own best friend. It's like, well, just think about your good friends. What would they say to you? And just hear their voice in your head, because the voices in our head are usually like kind of a slave driver, right? They're just really push you to further wreck yourself, when your best friend would be like, I don't know, I'm pretty sure you shouldn't go to the gym today, or I'm pretty sure you shouldn't eat that food that makes you feel terrible, because it's going to make you all inflamed and achy and have a stomachache tomorrow. And I'm pretty sure you shouldn't try to get 3 hours of sleep. Your best friend would tell you those things. So I think that's a really good way to just check in. Like I always say, are you listening to your BS, or are you listening to your best friend? Like, listen to a voice in your head that's helpful. And if you don't have that, then you just think of your best friend. What would they tell you?
I love it. Or you can think about the advice you'd give someone you love, or because if you're putting your family before you, putting your spouse before you, putting your kids before you, what if your kid had this problem? What would
exactly?
Would you let them stay up till 3 a.m. working on a project and eat pizza, or would you help them, get rest and get the support they need? And we need to love ourselves as much as we love our loved ones.
Yeah, sometimes we need to be our own mother. Maybe that's an analogy that works for some people too. It's like we need a little mothering, somebody who could just, how like that feels, right? Someone who just loves you and would do anything for you. That's how we need to take care of ourselves. Even if it seems like it's only pesky at this point, like you said, we all have a metabolic weak link. So for me, it's going to be my blood sugar and autoimmunity. That's what's in my family. That's my genetics. So, and I have PCOS thus far. So when we that may be what it looks like for me. And, whereas my husband has, Parkinson's disease in his family, that would be his weak link if he doesn't take care of himself. So yeah, it's all going to show up a little different, but it's all the consequence of, environment, food, stress, inflammation, all the things that we can't control everything. I mean, we live in a modern, toxic world, but we can do the best we can.
Right. And I like that you point that out. It's not that, an MD would be like, oh, you have breast cancer in your family, so because of your genes, the genes are going to cause breast cancer. Right. That is the complete backwards way of looking at it. The way to properly look at it is, if you don't take care of your body, the weakest link will break. And genetically,
exactly.
If 9 times out of 10 in your family, if 10 family members don't take care of themselves, and 9 of them get a specific illness, then just know that not taking care of you is going to equal that, because that's the weakest link. So you got to take care of yourself, and taking care of yourself includes rest and digest, includes those lifestyle changes, and eating healthy, and exercising appropriate for where you are right now. And that's another thing about like those TV shows out there where the sort of like instant transformation, 400-pound people walk in, and one season later they're all 120-pound athletes. And you could sit on the couch and watch these people puke on a gym floor because they're exercising 12 hours a day. And especially this is disheartening for women who are overweight with hormonal issues and adrenal fatigue, because they go and they're like, okay, I'm gonna, today's the day, and so they go out and they try to push themselves in the gym, and they end up making it worse, basically, not better.
Exactly.
Right. I love that you said common is not normal. I think that is a wonderful sort of mindset to remember, because when going to a doctor, an MD, a lot of them will be like, well, you're just getting older. And I cannot tell you how many times I've heard this from guests and also from listeners, that they have a bunch of symptoms and they go to their MD and it's, well, you're just getting older, here's a drug. And I'm sorry, but symptoms are not normal. Or I'll talk to people and they'll say, I'm really healthy, I'm only on 4 medications.
Yeah.
And if you're on any medications, if you have, if your body is out of balance to the point where it needs a medical intervention, then that is not the definition of health. Maybe you're healthier than you used to be, but the definition of health is freedom from symptoms. And so, I love that you're helping people sort of to wake up that symptoms are not normal, and they're not, they're common, because 70% of adult Americans are on at least one prescription medication. So it is common to be on medication, but common isn't healthy. And we want
and I'm sorry, Ashley, go ahead.
No, I was just saying we want to break free from that mindset that it's normal to be on medication and that it's normal to have symptoms. We need to break free and just go, hey, common is not where I want to be. I don't want to be commonplace. I want to have exceptional health, and I really want to break away from the norm. We need to swim upstream if we want to break away from the norm, which is, the norm is dying of heart disease in your 60s
right,
or early 70s, and yet there are people, like a woman just recently died at 114 years old, America's oldest woman. And so we have the genetic potential to at least live to 114. And yet, if you go the route of where everyone else is going right now, to be common, then it's, dying of heart disease in your early 70s.
Yeah, and your symptoms, that's, again, that's just your body talking to you. Like, it's not, they're not just things we talk to our doctor about. That is your body saying, hey, I'm really struggling with this. And what happens, like we were just saying, they might kind of wave at you, wink at you, maybe talk to you quietly. Eventually they will yell, eventually they will say something big and loud, and you'll be forced to deal with it. So don't ignore all the little messages and the little ways they're talking to you all the time with the stuff. I think every person who's not, my practice has changed now. I have most people have been to other practitioners like me. I'm usually more the end of the road versus the beginning. But when I first started and I was working with more of the general population, I can't believe how many people think it's just normal to be bloated after you eat. It's like, that's not normal. Or we've worked it into our afternoon. There's coffee break. It's not necessarily good to be tired every day at 3:00. Like, that's a sign that you can't get through your day.
Speaking of sign, what other symptoms would appear if someone is beginning to have chronic adrenal fatigue?
Yeah, so obviously there's fatigue, right? You feel tired all the time. So that's kind of the biggie. But as cortisol rhythms start to shift, so initially there's often that period of higher stress before you come out on the other side of it, where you're more burned out. So that time looks a little different. So if you're dealing with what I call like the frazzled and wired, and you're really wound up and you feel quote unquote stressed out, a lot of times that's when you wake up with a low appetite, especially for that protein breakfast we've been telling you should eat. You wake up kind of achy. You might feel puffy. You're having more carbohydrate, starch, sugar plus fat kind of cravings. And oftentimes you're having a harder time falling asleep at night. So that's sort of that high stress period. When you get into what we consider adrenal fatigue, sometimes you're just like wiped out, like you're just kind of in the low energy place, your low cortisol place. But for many people, there's a lot of stuff that goes on the middle where there may be times of day where it's high and times where it's low, and you're kind of all over the place. And that is that dysregulation where your body, your brain and your adrenals are sort of losing the ability to coordinate the conversation. So your brain tells all your glands what to do. So we've got your hypothalamus and your pituitary sending signals to your thyroid, your ovaries, your adrenals, etc., trying to tell them, hey, secrete this hormone and do this thing. And during that time of going through stress and getting into adrenal fatigue, there's a lot of confusing messages. So people have read blogs about this and stuff, and they're like, well, I don't know. I can't fall asleep at night, but I also can't stay asleep through the night. And I also have really low energy clearly in the afternoon. So there's a lot of people that experience symptoms of both. And that's still a part of like adrenal fatigue. And then there's the people on the other side who are just very low cortisol and dealing more with those types of symptoms. So can't keep their blood sugar up, can't stay asleep through the night. Also can be dealing with some, low, like having trouble with their blood sugar and low appetite as well. So there's that whole spectrum, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on sort of in the middle. But some of the other symptoms that we maybe don't think of as often is not being able to tolerate bright light. That's a big one, walking into in the sun and really having a hard time without wearing some sunglasses. So those are some biggies. And then peeing all the time is definitely a sign of adrenal fatigue. It can be part of blood sugar problems for PCOS, but that's the one that I think gets missed, a lot. That you're just, you drink water, it just immediately goes through you, because we talk about cortisol and we talk about adrenaline as hormones from the adrenal gland, but we've also got aldosterone, which helps us maintain our, fluid balance and our electrolyte balance. So if you're someone who's like, I try to drink water, but I just have to pee constantly, or it feels like I don't even drink that much water and I'm always having to run to the bathroom, that can definitely be another one. So there's so many other symptoms of, and then also, I think, too, one that we forget because we are busy and stressed is just how well can you handle emotional stress? Like, are you in a place now where everything is just really, really hard for you to cope with when it comes to dealing with your family and dealing with work? That's one that kind of gets missed, I think, sometimes.
I love it. I got when I had chronic adrenal fatigue, like major, in the mornings, I couldn't process language. I don't know if you ever heard of that one being one of the symptoms, but I would wake up in the morning, and of course it would be more like noon. And for about an hour, I couldn't really understand words that were spoken to me. Like, it was just too much overwhelm, and I needed to drink. It was like I was a zombie. I felt like I was still asleep, and I had to drink a lot of coffee and just like let myself wake up, and then I was okay. And then and I had the blood sugar thing, and it was crazy. And I saw that it started to get better quite quickly at first, like when I made the major shifts, like, okay, supplements, lifestyle, and diet, and I made those changes, and then I noticed immediately more energy, and I didn't have the brain fog in the morning. But getting hormones balanced, that takes a longer period of time. Have you had great success in helping women to completely reverse PCOS, Hashimoto's, and chronic adrenal fatigue?
Yeah, so adrenal fatigue is the one where if we can get to the cause of it, we can usually get the adrenals in the brain working better. And sometimes that means you stay on a couple of your supplements because there's certain things about your life you can't change, right? Like you can't change when you have a brand new baby. Like that's going to be stressful for a while, for years. I mean, I've got a 5 and a 2-year-old, and it's definitely a whole new kind of stress and schedule and lack of sleep that there's nothing I can do about that right now. So it is what it is. So I take my adrenal support. Now, there may be a time when I don't have as much stress in my life and I don't necessarily need that. So with adrenal fatigue and adrenal stress, like getting to the root cause of that, is it, are there other things that we have to support? Like I mentioned, the electrolytes, is your thyroid low? There's potentially a lot of those stressors. And like you just talked about all the lifestyle ones, right? You got to get yourself to bed. You got to not wreck yourself in the gym. You have to eat right. There's a lot of things you have to do in your lifestyle, but then getting those metabolic stressors removed, whether that's, again, chronic infection, food sensitivities, a gut that's not working right, inflammation, thyroid health, going through menopause, all these are other stresses that if you support and treat around that, you should be able to get the adrenals working better. Now, when it comes to like PCOS and Hashimoto's, so for me, and I know there's definitely people that talk about this very differently. So I don't necessarily think of myself as like curing those things or getting rid of those things, because I think of it more as, can we get you to a place where you're functioning really well? Let's say PCOS, for example. You're happy with your body composition, you're happy with your appetite and your cravings, your skin is good, you're getting a period, all that good, pregnant if you want to. And there's, of course, some cases of PCOS where that doesn't happen. But for most part, we can get those things at least going a lot better. And with Hashimoto's, we can get antibodies down and thyroid numbers up. But what happens once we have those conditions, and the only reason I don't, say the word, I guess, cure, is because that, again, like I said before, is our metabolic weak link, right? So there's some things we're going to need to do to keep ourselves in remission, or to keep ourselves with this condition feeling like really managed and you're feeling really great. And so, like, for me, example, with PCOS, if I get super stressed out, don't get enough sleep, eat too much sugar, eat too much gluten, it's like the foods that don't work for me, work out like a crazy person, I'm going to break out. My cycle's going to get late. I'm not trying to get pregnant right now, but I would be certain that I probably wouldn't be as effective at that. So those things are going to happen. I'm going to gain weight easily, because that is my metabolic weak link. It's my cross to bear. So yeah, I feel like that is just maybe a little bit different way that I talk about that, and not to be like too dismal, like you can't heal yourself, because of course your body's amazing and it can do all kinds of things. I think of it more as you're in remission and you've got it managed, you got it handled, and you're really rocking it with that health condition. But if we go back to doing what we had before, that metabolic weakness for you will still be a weakness.
Do you think that it's because like your genetic, how you are, that's your weakness? Or do you think if you took a large cut of the population and gave them the same amount of stressors, so they ate the foods they shouldn't eat that are their body's reacting to, took away their nutrition, made them on a high stress, gave them high stress, low sleep, and made them exercise well beyond what they should be doing, do you think all of them would also develop the same, would develop hormonal issues and exhibit those types of symptoms?
Well, I think there's probably a limit we can push our stress response in all of us, but this really all comes down to what we call epigenetics. So there's, now we can go to something like 23andMe and get our whole genome, and it's great. You can do that for $199 and get this data that really tells you a lot about what your risk factors are going to be because of certain links in your metabolism. So you and I are going to have, we might both have PCOS, but we may have totally different reasons for why that showed up for us. So PCOS is an interesting one because there's a very different faces for PCOS, and we've got different body types, and some women are getting a period and some don't. Like I, for example, got pregnant super easy, and I have women in my practice who end up needing medication to get pregnant. So it's a big one, and we don't all have the same genetics. So for some of us, we may have more genetic issues and more predispositions to a variety of metabolic issues that are going to come up for us. That's going to make us the ones that don't tolerate stress, very well. So I think that's really kind of the future of where we're learning about medicine, because we know those people, right, that seem to, I'm in New York City, and I've got a lot of incredibly high functioning, incredibly seemingly really quite healthy people that, if I had their lifestyle, I would be wrecked. There would be absolutely no way that I could keep up with that, drinking every night, great, entertaining clients, traveling internationally all the time. I mean, international travel just wrecks me. So there definitely are people with, I think probably a better metabolism and less genetic impact in terms of they're running certain pathways that are important really, really well, whereas someone like me, I've got like 3 holes in that pathway. So if I'm not careful, I'm going to be the one who really suffers for those things. And something like PCOS, showed up really early for me. So some people do really well until later in their life. And maybe they don't have anything kind of creep up until much later. So I do think genetics have a huge part to play in that. But we have to remember with genetics, like that's the hand you're dealt, right? We have a lot of control of how we play that. So, I probably wouldn't be a very good, stockbroker or international banker in New York City, because that kind of stress and lifestyle would be really, really tough for me. But there's clearly people that handle it, quite well.
That makes so much sense. And I think it's so fascinating, the 23andMe. Now, if someone wanted to go see what holes they have or sort of what their weak spots are, do they just go do it themselves, or to be able to understand the test results, they need to work with a doctor?
Yeah, so 23andMe, anybody can get, and there's two versions. The one is, I think, $99. The other one is $199. And the first one gives you more like ancestry and some information like that that's interesting, but it doesn't give you like what genetic SNPs you have. So SNP just means there's an amino acid. Basically, the way we read DNA, it's a little amino acid code, and there's one amino acid that's been changed. And that little change creates potentially a whole lot of stuff for us in terms of our metabolism. So that data, they call it the raw data. So it's just going to be like your actual genome. And it's going to look, if you do it yourself, you could definitely order the test yourself. And there's a variety of services that will help you interpret that. And there are some PhDs and people that work in that, and I'm totally blanking on who some of those people are, but there are definitely people that can help you interpret that. The way that I do it in my office is we take the raw data, and I use a program developed by Dr. Ben Lynch, who's an naturopathic doctor who's probably one of the leading experts in at least the MTHFR mutation. But he now has a program that is great for clinicians, because we can put your raw data into that, relatively inexpensive. It's, like $40 or $50 to run it through his program. And then we can get some really great clinical information for us to look at, which genetic issues do you have with which enzymes, and what is that going to increase your risk for? And then we can look at that and take a whole new level to interpreting your other blood work, because now we know why that supplement we give everyone for this thing didn't work for you. So it can be really, or why something that we give that always works, you had this crazy bizarre reaction to. So it's really, really interesting. So yeah, I think it depends on how you want to use the data, but if you've got a practitioner that you can use your 23andMe, it can really take your treatment to a whole new level.
That's really exciting, because I think that for women who have PCOS and for men and women who have chronic adrenal fatigue, there doesn't seem to be a lot of hope out there when they start to look at what the mainstream says. And then when they start to do just the generic, okay, I'm going to just take these supplements. Well, if they're, for example, they're not methylating their folic acid, then that is that by taking a supplement that's not methylated, that's going to not create the result you want. And you might be taking a really high quality supplement, but if you're not able to process it like other people can, then you're going to be wondering why it's not working for you. And so I love that you can do this kind of testing and understand how the body is going to respond and how to tailor their supplement program to support their body's ability to heal itself.
Yeah, it's really good information. And I think, it's not free, but it's not crazy expensive. I feel like it's fairly, it's in a range that is not super cost prohibitive to get some really potentially life-changing information.
Absolutely. I mean, it makes such a difference to be able to help someone heal from this. So for those who have PCOS, let's talk a bit about that. What kind of lifestyle changes, without knowing the 23andMe, what kind of blanket lifestyle changes are absolutely a must?
So PCOS, again, it can look so different, but what is at the crux of it for most of them is some degree of insulin resistance. So there's some degree of blood sugar problem, and some women are only dealing with it tending to go too high, but a lot of them are also dealing with it going too low because they at the same time are dealing with adrenal stress issues and some other stuff going on. There's also, PCOS and Hashimoto's are like BFF. They are running around together all the time. And I see women all the time with PCOS that are not getting their thyroid thoroughly evaluated and not getting screened for Hashimoto's. So there's a couple things that are common to all of them. But when it comes to, like, someone just Googled PCOS nutrition, like, what should I be eating? Mostly what you see is you should just eat low carb. And sometimes people just say, well, you should just eat a less processed diet, more whole grains. Well, whole grains are certainly a step up from, let's say, a bag of Cheetos, but that could be way too many carbs for one person. So, for example, I get away with very little carbohydrate. That is not a fuel that I'm very efficient at using. But I also can't go zero carb because I work out pretty hard, and I also have more adrenal fatigue now than I did maybe when I was 20. So something I think is super important for everyone with PCOS is to not sort of take that blanket information and look at your, what I call your unique carb tolerance. So I have articles on my blog about this, and it's basically kind of doing away with the idea that you need a lot of carbs, you need a lot of carbs at this time of day, you need to be low carb because you have PCOS. And taking into account, like, well, what is your unique carb tolerance? Because it's going to be different for you and I both have PCOS, but we might have to eat very differently in order to manage our symptoms and, keep everything that we are working on kind of going in the right direction. So sometimes that is a certain amount of a carbohydrate you need to eat less of, and that could range anywhere from a couple bites to a cup. So I have them and just take different foods and different carbohydrates and just sort of put them in your nutrition plan and keep everything else the same, and then watch how you feel. So you're going to be looking for symptoms after you eat if your blood sugar is going too high. So after you eat, if you get more hungry, more cravings, or you get sleepy, or you feel like, well, I am full, but I just kind of want to keep eating, and that's not because you're still hungry, or you get that sugar craving where it's just, I just have to have something to eat sweet after I eat, but you eat the piece of chocolate and it doesn't really relieve the craving. Those are all signs that your insulin is stressed, trying to get your blood sugar back down. So there's those symptoms going on. And then looking at symptoms between meals, like, did you eat a particular combination and then an hour later you're absolutely starving? And you're like, that's weird. I shouldn't be so hungry. I just ate. But every time I eat, let's say, bacon and eggs for breakfast, I'm really hungry in about an hour. So looking at those different combinations of foods and adjusting fiber and protein content first, but then looking at, like, where do I need to deal with my carbs? So I think that's a super powerful tool. And one sort of confounding variable, for example, my reaction to gluten is I get very tired as soon as I eat it. So it's not really a matter of, did I eat a ton of, like, a wheat-based carb, like I ate a whole donut or a whole croissant. That might make me tired because of the carbs, but if I even get like a little bit of soy sauce that has wheat in it, I'm going to get tired too. So that's one kind of confounding thing when you're looking at symptoms post-workout, is if you get really tired when you eat something, that may also be inflammation from something you're sensitive to. But I think the carb thing is super important because, I feel like the diet advice for PCOS is it's really template, and it doesn't really customize for these different variants. And the fact that most women do not have one hormone problem. Like, most of the time we've got maybe a blood sugar problem that's a combination of insulin and cortisol. We might also have inflammation. We might also have an autoimmune disease. We might also have a low thyroid problem. Women with PCOS sometimes have high prolactin. We oftentimes have low progesterone. Many of them have estrogen dominance. So it's hard to just look at any of these things and think that I can just do this one thing, to adjust it, because there really is often, 9 times out of 10, it's never just one hormone, because they're all sort of part of this woven sweater, right? When we tug on one and put a lot of stress on, let's say, what we were talking about earlier, we put a lot of stress on cortisol because we keep putting ourselves under stress, that is going to throw off your blood sugar. And eventually it's probably going to affect your gut, which could affect your estrogen metabolism. It's also going to, for most women, especially if you have PCOS, lower your progesterone. All that stress is going to impact your ability to get good levels of your active thyroid hormone. So we have to really look at that big picture.
How do you get to the root?
Like in my office?
Like, yeah, when you're working with someone, how do you like decipher it? I imagine it's like looking at the matrix, and all these numbers are coming down, and you're like, yes, I can see it, right? No one else can, because like you said, you adjust one thing and you tug on one thing, and all the other hormones are connected, because you're practicing holistic medicine. So you're looking at the body as a whole, you're looking at the hormones as a whole. Is there ever one simple root, or really it is a combination of the fact that they were stressed for so long, lacking nutrition for so long, and then the domino effect happened, and so now you've got to just help them pick the dominoes back up.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, most women that come to me, like things are pretty out of whack. They're having symptoms across multiple hormone platforms. So, you go for the biggies. So adrenal, stress, and blood sugar. So cleaning up your nutrition, whether that means eating more nutrient dense foods, or managing your carbohydrate tolerance, because we kind of think of like blood sugar as like, well, sure, I don't feel good when I don't eat, but like that is when we think of like between meals, if you are somebody who gets forgetful, irritable, people around you are like, you're a totally different person. That is your brain starving, right? That is like a personality shift. That's a significant neurological finding when I hear that, even though it's like, well, that happens. So we really want to manage all of those things when it comes to blood sugar. It seems so simple, but so I start with those basics. Like, let's get your blood sugar more normal. Let's look at something that you might be eating or doing that's causing more inflammation. So I guess, again, in functional medicine, we look at some certain priorities like adrenal stress and inflammation and gut health, and kind of look at those big things and do those first. And I always really like to teach women a lot about cortisol and insulin because those two hormones really affect so many other things. So, of course, thyroid is super important as well. It's one that you may have a little more harder time tweaking on your own. But when it comes to stress and what we eat, it doesn't always feel like it, but we do have a lot of control over those. And they are going to profoundly affect all of your other hormones. So when I see a woman with PCOS, let's say, and she was told that she's estrogen dominant, so she's just kind of working on two things, taking a couple supplements for estrogen dominance, trying to eat more broccoli and Brussels sprouts. Well, that's great, but if she's super stressed and we haven't dealt with helping her fine-tune her nutrition in other ways, like balancing her blood sugar and dealing with her stress, it doesn't, we're not going to get anywhere with estrogen and progesterone. So when it comes to kind of looking at that big picture, start with the basics of stress and sleep and good food and keeping your blood sugar really level. Those sound so simple, and I almost think we don't even want to hear that, right? We want to hear like, what's the big smoking gun and this thing that is I'm gonna find one pill for that, or this perfect supplement and it's all gonna get better. Those basics are so important, and they're gonna have to be done all the time, right? That's something that's ongoing. It's keeping track of those things. So do those things first. We almost always have to work on healing up someone's gut because we have been eating something that we're sensitive to for a long time, or we've been stressed for a long time, or we never quite got the balance right after we took a certain antibiotic, even years ago. So I work on the gut and work on the blood sugar, work on the stress, kind of first and foremost. And I screen all women's thyroid really carefully because so often what they get done is just one screening test, which is just the TSH, and it's just not enough to really get a good idea for what's going on with that woman's thyroid. So those are the places we start. And then if we're not, getting anywhere, especially with the adrenal stress, we have to dig deeper. Are we dealing with more food sensitivities or chronic infections or something that's, deeper under the surface that we have to dig for? But yeah, it's a big, we're complicated. There's a lot of stuff going on.
But I love that you have it laid out, and you can test for these things, and then you can help you can educate your patient and help them begin to heal. And the fact is that once they clear up their blood sugar, not only are they going to be on the path to healing PCOS and healing estrogen dominance and chronic adrenal fatigue and all the other all these things are interwoven. But I bet there's symptoms they didn't even know they had. And I'll give you an example. My husband and I, we have the most amazing relationship. We're business partners and best friends and parents together. And a few years ago, we were having these wicked fights, like out of nowhere and about nothing. And I mean about nothing. It's just, I'm like, why? And we're both like, and we're not kind of yelly people, but we're sort of like raised our voice, like picking at each other, and we're like, it's about nothing. And I just noticed this sort of pattern, and neither of us liked it. And I'm like, well, we really need to stop this. Like, what's going on? And we couldn't figure out what was going on. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks in the middle of a fight. I'm like, I said to my husband, you're acting like a totally different person. And he's like, I know, and I don't know why, and I can't help it. And then I was like, oh, wait a sec. What did you eat today? And it just, the light bulb went off and I said, okay. And we're both like yelling at each other. I'm like, go eat some scrambled eggs and then we'll talk in 20 minutes. And
get that blood sugar back up.
Exactly. And so we both had some protein and we called a truce, and sure enough, we figured out that the root of, and we kind of, we had a conversation where we traced back every like fight we could remember through our whole marriage. And it was all blood sugar related. Either my blood sugar was way off, his blood sugar was way off, or both of us. But we could see, and it's so funny because then we started to see other people get hangry, sort of like, right? Hangry, or like have fights, and then we're like, we started to see other people have blood sugar problems because it was resulting in just like illogic, emotional like craziness. And I just imagine how many divorces have happened because both one or both of the spouses had out of control blood sugar issues, and they didn't know it because their symptoms are showing up like just illogical emotions and real super irritability. Because when we're irritable, we think everyone else is crazy and we're the normal one.
Oh, right. Yeah. And that's your brain just struggling to put, neurons to fire. It's just that your brain cells are just literally kind of starving. So yeah, I think, I've got the exact same stories with, my husband's like, I eat and then he's like, can we just talk about what happened a half hour ago? And I'm like, what? I feel fine. I feel totally fine. I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm not being a crazy person. And he's like, no, you're like night and day to how you were. So I think, the blood sugar one, we've had all that same stuff. And the other one that's interesting is sometimes a food sensitivity doesn't show up as a tummy ache or a rash or an instant headache. My reaction to gluten is that I don't get a stomach ache. I don't have any of those digestive symptoms. So it was a long time before I just took it out for an experiment. And then a couple weird things happened that got better that I was surprised at. But one of the things for me is I get a very fatalistic depression that sets in if I have gluten. And I didn't have it all the time before because I always ate kind of a low carb diet. So it kind of came and went anyway without me really knowing it. And it definitely puts so much inflammation in my brain. And I get this very fatalistic type of the blues that happen. And so now if I get even an accidental exposure to like a little bit of soy sauce, it tends to happen, but at least I know what it is. And so I go into this funk where, let's say I got off the call with you and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was terrible. She didn't like me. No one got any benefit from that. I should just quit being a doctor altogether. It's kind of spiraled down into, well, this is bad, so everything is bad. The world may as well end. And it's just like this really significant thing that would happen. And now I know, and of course, when you feel like that, well, what I want to do, I want to eat more things that have gluten and cheese and sugar because those are the foods that I'm craving right now. So I want to eat more stuff that's probably going to make me feel bad. So if I didn't know that that's why that was happening, so I have to be really careful if I do get exposed to something like that and know that I may not feel great for 48 to 72 hours, but those cravings aren't necessarily real. And if I indulge them more, I'm just going to continue to feel bad. But that's another like significant personality change that could just come from, eating a food.
Mm-hmm. There's these really, really neat studies where they took people in the schizophrenics in the schizophrenic ward, and so it was a ward that was completely closed off. The only food they had access to was the food they were given, and they did this both in America and they did it in France. And when they took them off grains, their schizophrenic episodes significantly decreased. And then when they gave them grains again, reintroduced them to it, they started to have their schizophrenic episodes. I'm not saying that it cured them, but it significantly lowered their schizophrenic outbursts. And so with medication and with not being on grains, they had they felt the most normal they could feel, and the healthy they could feel emotionally and mentally. And that is just, if that's how big of a reaction that someone who has schizophrenia has with eating grains, can you imagine, like you having this fatalistic depression just by taking out one grain?
Right. And what if that was like my quote unquote healthy diet, right? Like I ate sprouted grain bread and, whole grain stuff. And yeah, that was my reaction. And I had a really powerful experience when I was just newly graduated with my sister-in-law. My boyfriend's sister at the time, now my sister-in-law, she had a number of food sensitivities, and her family was like she's just had a lot of like emotional outbursts and difficulty controlling her temper. And she had a lot like ADD type symptoms, and her personality, she was just a completely different person off some of those foods. And, that was really like life-changing for her. And it was a good lesson right out of the gate for me of just how powerful our food is. And, sometimes we just don't give it that credence. But yeah, the research between our immune system and the neurological research, grains are especially gluten, a really interesting thing that we're learning a lot about, and how it's, a really significant problem for some, not everybody, but for some people.
Now, you had mentioned earlier that you like to do much more deeper or extensive testing around thyroid when someone comes to you and they have these other conditions. What kind of extensive testing do you do?
So most of the time, if you were just to pop into your doctor's office for like a regular checkup, or even if you said, hey, doc, I'm kind of worried about, I'm really tired, I can't lose weight, or my hair's falling out. And what they typically do is a screening TSH. So they're looking for, is the signal from your brain to your thyroid going up? That would tell us your body is sending the message like, hey, we need more thyroid hormone. So a lot of people only get the TSH. Well, there's a whole lot of problems with just doing that. One, it's not very complete. Two, it can bounce around quite a bit, especially if you have Hashimoto's. And three, sometimes it's artificially low for other reasons. So it's not, it should be more elevated, but it can't be elevated. So it's really important to at least do a TSH and a T4. So looking at like, what is your thyroid actually making? If you're feeling bad and you're on medication, then some of those other tests become really important. But if, I really like to test women's TSH, their T4, their T3, their reverse T3, and really look at the whole cascade of thyroid hormones. So what are you making? Are you converting it into the active form? Do you have enough of the free ones, the ones that we actually need? Do you have an elevation of the inactive form, that reverse form? Because that's driven by stress and inflammation. Because a lot of times we've got a thyroid condition that is subclinical, or what we call functional, where you don't really need medication. I think there's a lot of practitioners who would argue there's a lot of times when we don't need medication, because there's so many other things we can impact. So if we work on stress and inflammation and help repopulate your gut with healthy bacteria, up to 20% of your sort of lost active thyroid hormone gets reconjugated by a healthy gut. So that could be significant for someone. So all those things are important, and we can fix all those things in functional medicine and work on all those things to give you better thyroid output. Back to like the idea of the free hormones, that's what actually has an effect in your body's cells. So you need to have enough hormone made. You need to have not too much of it bound up to the carrier protein. Like think of it like a taxi that drives the hormone to where it's going. You don't want all your hormone to be stuck in the taxi. You also don't want it to all be loose and nobody in a taxi, because our body is very smart, and when we have too much hormone around, it stops listening to it. So looking at those free levels is important as well, because that can give us an idea of should we work on, or maybe test or work more on sex hormone balance, because estrogen and testosterone can really affect those things. So when we look at that whole panel, we can really get a lot of information, and this is just like standard blood work from your doctor's office. This is not like crazy expensive functional testing, we have a lot of cool things we can look at, but just looking at just the basic stuff we can get on a standard blood panel, we can really look at a lot of like potential other hormone issues to decide if that's testing we should do, or matched with your symptoms, if that's an area we should work on. And we can catch a lot of this stuff before it becomes a bigger thyroid problem, or before just medication is given because you are looking a little low thyroid, but we didn't look at the whole picture. We just gave you medication. Sometimes that's hard for people to get off of. And I also always screen women for Hashimoto's antibodies. So both ways, the TPO and the TG, so the thyroid peroxidase and the thyroglobulin antibodies. If it gets done, a lot of times it's only the TPO. That's the more common one, but some women do have the other one positive and their TPO is fine. So I screen women for all of those things. And if you're somebody listening who's like, well, I had that test and I was checked for Hashimoto's and I was told it was fine. Well, time marches on. So you may have done something in the last couple of years. So if you were tested for it a couple of years ago, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not a problem now. We have a lot of people with a wiped out immune system from food sensitivities or a leaky gut or a chronic infection. And so their white count is low. And sometimes I see that, but I see this borderline antibodies that, an antibody test requires you having a pretty fit immune system. So if you've been somebody who's kind of wiped out on antibodies, you may have had a, false negative. And then the other thing I see is that women just get that one marker tested and not both of them. And then there's still women who are like, I don't know, and we look back through all their lab work and here it is, positive Hashimoto's antibodies, and they're like, no one even told me. And the reason that they don't tell them is there's no extra pill for that. They're going to still manage the thyroid levels if you need medication and make sure you're on, a good, safe dose. But it's not like something else additional comes if it's Hashimoto's. That's where all this stuff that, you and I have been talking about for the last hour comes into play. So I really do that full workup so that we can see if there's a thyroid problem, catch it early and see what's the cause of it. Is it autoimmune? Is it stress? Is it some of these other hormone imbalances like estrogen or testosterone? And is it coming from your gut? And how can we, help repair all those things so that you can either avoid taking a medication, or if you are taking a medication, let's keep you on a dose that's not excessively high and help it work better.
Have you actually had a patient or patients who their previous doctor didn't even tell them they tested positive for Hashimoto's antibodies?
It happens a couple times a month. It's shocking.
That is like, yeah, that should be malpractice.
Or it probably should. And so it's either that they were like, no one even mentioned that, or like they mentioned that in passing, but no one explained to me what that meant. So a lot of times it doesn't get brought up at all, or other times they're like, oh, or the patient says, what's this? And they're like, oh, it's thyroid antibodies. Everybody has them. Or just there's no real conversation around what that means. And that's a real problem. I mean, for all the stuff we just said, right? Because in the functional world or the natural health world, there's a lot we can do and should do because there's other stuff to be thought of. We have to look past the fact that this is a thyroid antibody. We should do some stuff to support the thyroid, but we have to take a step back and look at the immune system because that's the real problem. This is an immune system now that's gone off the rails and decided that your thyroid doesn't belong to you or components of your thyroid don't, and it's mounting an attack against that. We want to quiet that down so that your thyroid is more protected. There are certainly a host of like low thyroid symptoms. I mean, books have been written about this that we're, normal thyroid labs, but you still have those low thyroid symptoms because the antibodies themselves, they create brain fog and inflammation and fatigue and hair loss. And so there's all these thyroid symptoms, but your doctor looks at your lab test and they're like, well, your thyroid levels are fine. I don't know why you're still feeling badly. So I think the antibodies are important for those two reasons. One, they're the root cause and we should protect your thyroid more. Two, that, the antibodies themselves can cause all the things I just mentioned, and plus that exercise intolerance we talked about earlier. But also, when women, this is the stats, at least for women, when we get one autoimmune disease, on average, we're going to get 3. So if we just ignore the immune system and just wait till, Crohn's shows up or, rheumatoid arthritis or something, I think that's just crazy when we could be doing so many things to help quiet that down and protect your whole body, right? Your whole other system, because that immune system's in your blood. It's going everywhere. And once we know that it's been dysregulated, there's a lot we can do to kind of rein that back in and help protect you sort of as a whole.
Right. And it's interesting, the whole concept, which is we could do this an entire talk in another interview, but the whole concept of autoimmune is really interesting to me, learning from, and one of my favorite naturopaths is Dr. Joel Wallach, he wrote a great book on epigenetics, by the way, and I found that fascinating. He described when I learned at first about what his belief around what causes autoimmune condition, and he believes that it's all related to the gut. It starts in the gut, and that the leaky gut syndrome and the inflammation in the body, the immune system's trying to clean up the inflammation, and then in doing so, it appears as though it's attacking a tissue, like attacking the thyroid or attacking the gut, but it's really, it was triggered by the inflammation. It's trying to clean up the inflammation. And so, because a lot of people have this mentality like my body's attacking me, and whereas when we think about, no, our body's doing the best job it can with the resources it has, and we need to aid it. We need to get on our body's side and help bring down the inflammation and heal the gut first and foremost, and make sure that we're, giving it all the nutrition it needs and the lifestyle it needs, so that it can do its job correctly. But right now it's not doing its job correctly because it's like haywire and you're throwing gasoline on a fire.
Yeah, and leaky gut does seem to be a part of it for pretty much all autoimmune issues, and definitely there's research on that with Hashimoto's in particular. And so we've got this genetic component, and then usually there's a leaky gut component, but there can often be like any host of other triggers, and it takes kind of that perfect storm. But a lot of us have that perfect storm, right? A lot of us have some autoimmunity in our family, and then we've got a leaky gut because we've been stressed, or we didn't know, or we had to take a lot of antibiotics for other reasons. We took the birth control pill that disrupted our flora. There's a lot of things that we unknowingly did, or we did when we were younger, or we just, it's so common, not necessarily normal. So yeah, there's so much we can do. And once it's tripped, but that doesn't mean we should just ignore it, right? There's so many things we can do to help that immune system, calm down. And glutathione, your antioxidant stuff, we talked about that earlier, so important to determining how well you're going to respond as someone that has an autoimmune disease. That's something that really impacts the severity and the, extent of a lot of that damage. So there's so much power. And I get so sad when because I on social media, hashtag Hashimoto's and thyroid and all this stuff a lot. And it's so interesting when I see, people that come to, let's say, my Instagram profile, and I click on some of them and you see things like Hashimoto's warrior, Hashimoto's fighter, or hypothyroidism sucks, or PCOS sucks. And I just think, that's such a sad way to be, because it just puts us back fighting ourselves. Like women, we fight ourselves all the time. Like, I want to eat a cookie. I shouldn't eat a cookie. I don't want to go to the gym. I should go to the gym. I don't want to do this, but I should. I should. We're constantly in that rigmarole of fighting ourselves. And so when we start separating us from this thing that's going wrong, I think and we're going to fight it, I think that can get a little bit tricky, because we start to just feel like our body betrayed us. But again, it's doing the best it can, given this crazy life we have and the changing environment. Our food is different. Our toxins are different. We're just bombarded with so many more things. Women in general, a lot of us have babies and work. There's a lot of stuff we're trying to do that maybe our physiology is just like, I wasn't totally prepared for all this, and I haven't had enough time to, evolve to be able to handle these kinds of stresses. So yeah, I think when we kind of turn towards feeling like our body betrayed us, or turn to that attitude of fighting, is not so good. And there's some newer research out on oxytocin, which is our feel-good hormone. So it's bonding, it's hugging, and it's laughing. And when we've taken the new research is saying that hormone has a profound effect on regulating the immune system. Part of that happens with, immune shifts that have to happen during pregnancy. That hormone is part of that. But we also know if we've got someone who's got this bad fighting, everything's miserable, my body's terrible, everything is bad attitude, those are the patients that don't do very well in terms of their autoimmunity. And maybe that has something to do with this little oxytocin hormone.
I love it, because I've seen that back when I was a physical therapist assistant, 3 lifetimes ago. I would see that those who came in with virtually the same problem, like frozen shoulder, which is so common to see in a physical therapy clinic, that the ones with really bad attitudes just kept re-injuring, or they wouldn't fully heal. They'd get to 90% and then re-injure, and we just see them for months and months. And then those who had this super awesome attitude about life and about that, yeah, of course I'm going to heal. This is just a bump in the road. They'd be in and out, and they would be they'd just do their exercises. Because if you have a mindset for success, you're going to do the activities and the behavior that creates that success, right? Whereas if you have an attitude of this sucks, I can't do it, then your behavior isn't going to be in alignment with healing. So, and then of course, then you've got the physiological component of oxytocin helping the body heal. I love that. So how can people work with you? It's just so amazing that you specialize in this. And I just know so many listeners are suffering from these issues, or at least want to do their own blood work and figure out, if they're suffering from these issues and get to the root cause of their symptoms. Can people work with you on Skype, or do they have to see you in person? How can someone be a patient of yours?
Yeah, so I have patients all over the world now. So I do, I'm calling it the new house call, right? Like I go to you. So everybody is virtual these days. So even my local patients I've just moved to, because I'm trying to kind of serve women all over with these same things. So when that happened and I became more of a specialist in these conditions, I just ended up with patients in, all over the place. So yeah, anyone who's anywhere can work with me. I'm at betterbydrbrooke.com. So everything is done via phone or Skype. And usually we'll be working with your other doctors if there's more, serious health conditions, trying to kind of help you get some stuff covered by your insurance if possible, because I'm totally out of network. But so I do work with people virtually. If you do really want to see someone close to you, so my website is betterbydrbrooke.com, but if you want to look for someone close to you, you can go to functionalmedicine.org, type in your zip code and see if there's someone that you could see, in person. And I get asked this a lot, how do I find someone that has your exact specialties in my area? That's a little bit harder. A lot of functional medicine doctors treat a really wide range of conditions, and I really work with women dealing with these, particular things. But the good news is I'm available. So that's how you can find me.
Awesome. I'd love for you to wrap up our interview by sharing some challenge that you'd like to give our listeners, something they could do now and for the next 7 days, and then beyond 7 days, to start on the path to better health.
So I think we talked earlier about finding your carb tolerance. I think that is a really important one. So that if you Google find your unique carb tolerance or Dr. Brooke unique carb tolerance, you're going to get that step-by-step approach, in my blog. So you can kind of walk through. And I think that's super important, of course, with women with PCOS, but we have to remember, we talked about that blood sugar thing is so important for all of these. It affects your thyroid and affects your adrenals, and it, affects your estrogen and progesterone. So it's a really important one that we all need to at least pay attention to. Some of us have to work a little harder than others. So walking through that process and taking the time to kind of look and see if that was the carbs or potential food sensitivities, and really dialing in that, piece of what works for you. So that is probably first and foremost, because we're all going to benefit from that. And blood sugar swings are a really significant stressor for our body. So it's one potential stress you may be able to alleviate just by fine-tuning carbohydrate intake, because it has such a profound pull on our blood sugar. And the more stressed we are, the more problems we're going to have with that. So it's not just for women with PCOS. It also becomes really important in menopause, because, as we go through menopause and we start to lose estrogen and progesterone, we become more insulin resistant and more sensitive to stress. So estrogen and progesterone kind of temper some of the negative effects of cortisol. So many women notice all of a sudden my nutrition and exercise plan's not working for me anymore, or I used to put on weight in my hips and thighs and not in my waist. Now all of a sudden I'm getting more, body fat around the middle. It just seems really bizarre to them. So this blood sugar thing is going to be really a big impact on your adrenal health, and then your sex hormones, whether that's PCOS or fertility, or working on how things change going through menopause. And then the other thing I think that I would like to challenge people to do is there's such a, I think it's so hard when we put, people come to me and they're stressed, and then I give them a bunch more stuff to do. I give them a new to-do list, or I love a blog post that's here's the 10 things you should do to decrease your stress. So I try to give people some really simple frameworks to kind of think about all the stuff they need to do when it comes to exercise and nutrition. So it's my little 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 system to just kind of think about how to structure your whole week to get the things that you need to get done, sort of balance your hormones and keep yourself going and not be totally overwhelmed by a really difficult regimen. So 5 walks per week. And I like to layer that with mindset work. So walking is a great time to listen to Ashley's podcast or listen to a book on tape, but it's also a really good time to work on your mindset. So picking a mantra and, using that while you're out and walking. Also, we need the fresh air, and walking is it's an exercise that's very hormone balancing. It's usually not going to push us one way or the other, especially if we're dealing with adrenal issues. So I usually say 4 meals a day. Some of that needs to be adjusted. So in terms of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, the 4 is for 4 meals a day, usually 3 meals and a snack. If you're someone with PCOS or you're someone dealing with blood sugar instability, whether that's from adrenal stress or insulin resistance, having those 4 meals be roughly the same size is usually a little bit better and easier for your system to tolerate than 3 big meals and a snack. The 3 I use is for 3 strength training workouts. So I do think there's a huge benefit for all of us to be strength training at some level. And even if it feels like it's really hard, going through stress decreases our muscle mass, either because we're not working out or we're in, a high stress place where cortisol is kind of degrading our muscle mass. For women with PCOS, it's muscle mass is your reserve of your metabolism and your insulin sensitivity. So it becomes really important to be strength training. And of course, as we get older, we know it's important for longevity and bone health. So that's the 3. The 2 is about 2 glasses of water a day, or at least 2 times as much water as anything else. And then the 1 is just for some prevailing positive mantra that kind of keeps you happy and going and, loving yourself and being your best friend. And it can be something really personal to you that you use throughout the day, or it can be as simple as thank you, or I love you, or everything's going to be okay. So that's my 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 way for people to kind of pull in all this stuff you're supposed to do to be healthy and exercise and eat right. And of course, there's customizations within your own unique hormone tendencies, but that's a pretty good balance for most of us.
That was so well said. Wonderful. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, Dr. Brooke Kalanick. Love to have you back. You're welcome anytime to share with our listeners how they can balance their hormones and get their energy back and heal their body naturally. I loved everything you shared. It was a real pleasure. Listeners, please check out Dr. Brooke, her website, betterbydrbrooke.com, and of course her wonderful podcast, Better Every Day. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Ashley. I'm happy to come back anytime.
Enjoy what you heard today on your episode of the Learn True Health podcast. Did something move you, inspire you? Did you get great information that's going to change your life? Awesome. That's exactly what I'm here to do, is to help you gain your health back. Please turn around and share this. If this is something that's helped you in any way, share this with those you love. Love the Learn True Health podcast and want to support us? Awesome. You can go to takeyoursupplements.com and you can support us that way. You'll get access to amazing supplements that are just really great quality for a great price. And there'll be someone on the other end of the line to help you pick out your supplements that are right for you. That's takeyoursupplements.com. Or join our membership, learntruehealth.com/join. That's another great way to support our podcast, support our movement, and you'll be supporting yourself. Gain more information, wonderful videos, wonderful trainings, and you'll also be able to share those with those you love as well. So go to learntruehealth.com/join. Want something fun for free? Go to learntruehealth.com, and right there on the front page, you'll see where you can get our free cookbook. I spent a lot of time making it, and it was so much fun. It's really delicious, healthy recipes. And you can also get our 7-day doctor course. Right there, it's 7 days of naturopathic videos sent right to your inbox, and you can learn from top naturopaths on how to gain health naturally. So that's takeyoursupplements.com for wonderful supplements. learntruehealth.com/join to join our awesome membership, which is only open for a limited time. You can get our free healthy cookbook, and you can also get for free 7 days of wonderful naturopathic videos sent to you. Just go to learntruehealth.com and you'll see it right there on the front page. Thank you so much for being a listener, and thank you for sharing and helping others. Let's spread this information and turn this ripple into a tidal wave.